You are listening to SeeThroughPanel Episode 5. My name is Cole Harvey. I'm here with Fahed Rahman.
Hello, everyone.
Today we're going to be talking about two webcomics from two different platforms. The first goes by the name of Graduation Nightmares. It is on Webtoon. And the second that we'll get into is called Momento Mori -Sins, and it's from the Tapas app. If you just want to take it away, Fahed, about Graduation Nightmares.
So the first comic that we're going to be talking about is Graduation Nightmares. It's by Teresa del Pilar. Teresa is a Spanish freelance illustrator specializing in making comics and board games. She also makes art-related videos where she shares her processes and tips. Graduation Nightmares is about Helena. She's graduating next week, and things seem to be going great, except for one thing. She can't have a good night's sleep. Plagued by constant nightmares, Helena can't get any proper shut-eye, and she's getting crankier and crankier by the minute. Literally tired of this situation, Helena decides to go out into the world and find out what the heck is wrong with her subconscious. Determined and desperate, she's willing to do just about anything to get a good night's sleep.
All right. Well, I'll just let you start about how you felt about this. Did you get caught up? Are you current on it?
So I read all the issues. So there's a couple of things that both these comics have in common. They're both, so for the first time in the podcast, we're doing comics that are unfinished stories. So it's a bit difficult to criticize the arc of the kind of like of the plot line for both of them, and they both feature female protagonists as well. I quite enjoyed Graduation Nightmares. I thought there was a lot to admire about the artwork, the dialogue, the kind of, I just enjoyed the general kind of atmosphere of the world that it created. So I'd be quite. I don't read a lot of web comics. I used to read quite a few of them, but I'd be very intrigued to see where the story kind of kind of continues, where she's kind of intending to go with kind of developing the world and the characters. What were your initial thoughts about it?
Well, I read this one first, and this was actually my first ever webcomic, so I was a bit, the layouts and the way it's constructed is a bit different for me, but I thought this one, Graduation Nightmares, was very charming. I love pretty much all the characters. They're all very unique. We haven't had a lot of time to kind of flesh out all the characters yet, but I do think that there's definitely something strong going there. The art, I think, is, you're going to notice a difference in, I don't want to say quality, but there's definitely a stylistic difference between these two comics that we're reading. And Graduation Nightmares goes between color and black and white with a lot of dot pitch on it. And I don't know about you, but I love the black and white, I guess, issues or episodes or whatever you want to call them. Although I do think the coloring is very good. I love the way this artist works in black and white.
Yeah, I think she her color stuff. I enjoyed both of them equally. So I enjoyed her choice of color palette. I agree, her work in black and white is exceptional. The thing that I had in mind was that this, if I saw artwork like this, either kind of in color or black and white, on like a Cartoon Network or a Nickelodeon show, it wouldn't look out of place. No. For me. It kind of, I don't want to say reminiscent. It's not reminiscent of anything in particular, but kind of like it reminds me of a lot of different things. Things like what was that show on Disney about the brother and sister that lived with their cranky uncle in the forest? So it reminded me a lot of, shows where it's about, a group of friends kind of growing up together. So I felt, if I saw this particular story playing out on like a Cartoon Network or a Nickelodeon show, it wouldn't look out of place at all.
Definitely, yeah, I definitely agree. The art is very I don't want to say clean. It feels clean in a lot of places, but the figure drawings are awesome. I love the way that what is her name? Teresa draws all these characters because they're all very unique looking and they all kind of have their own facial expressions. She's very good at facial expressions. And conversationally, the dialogue combined with those facial expressions really makes for an interesting thing to read. And normally, when you have a lot of talking, that can weigh you down. But in terms of a comic where there's mostly talking, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, did you feel that there was kind of a lot of dialogue? Because I felt there was. I didn't feel that way. Come to think of it, actually, there was a lot of the comic is them is just characters talking to each other. But before you said that, it's not something that I realised. So I think that's probably a sign that when she's writing dialogue, it's not a chore to read through. Because I think for me personally, I notice when there's a lot of text on the page where it's a chore to read through it, and I'm just like, oh god, you're covering up all the beautiful art with this guff. But I never felt that way. But I think you're right. There's quite a lot of dialogue in the comic.
It's pretty dialogue heavy, but yeah, you never really notice it. There's you know, in some comics you'll turn the page and see a wall of text and just kind of almost close the book for a second, but in this it's pretty tame. Even on the heavy dialogue pages or panels, it's all very seamless to read through. And what I like about this compared to a lot of the other webcomics that I've seen, I guess I haven't read them, so this might not be fair, but in this they're actually working with panel layouts on the page, because so some comics that I've seen will just be a vertical or a horizontal scroll of single
Yeah,
panel.
infinite scroll. Yeah,
Yes, I like this because I've always loved that the panel layouts offer another form of, artistic flair. So in this we're still keeping that, which I really appreciated because I like that she uses those grids a lot.
yeah. I've she the story. I mean, if she took this uh kind of put into a graphic novel format, like a page format, I don't think it would lose that much. There are some web comics that rely on the web comic format that you wouldn't be able to adapt them into a traditional print book because it wouldn't work. The effect of the storytelling would be lost. But with this, maybe it's for some people it might be a weakness that you would be able to just print this out. But for me, I agree with you. I think she's got a really good handle on how to tell a story using panels, and it flows beautifully. The world she's put onto the screen, I suppose I was going to say put onto the page, has got this weight to it, if you know what I mean. It kind of everything feels kind of like tactile and lived in.
Definitely agree. Definitely agree. Especially to me on the, I guess she does black and white, mostly for dream sequences. Yeah. So the
Yes.
black and white's only for the dream sequences. And to me, that's when it gets most visually interesting. I think her color work is good, but I don't particularly love some of the things she's doing, and I never really noticed that until I got to the most recent or the very end, I guess you could say, dream sequence where it starts to kick up, and I guess it's kind of actiony. The whole thing isn't really actiony, but um, towards the end it starts to pick
Yes.
up the pace. Yeah, and that when it gets a little fantastic and a little bit more fantasy, I think she really has room to stretch out her arms and show you what she can do, because these most recent pages are very, very beautiful. I think also it's probably just her improving in general, but
Yes. So I went to check out her YouTube page, and I only watched a couple of her YouTube videos. And what she's saying that she's trying to do with this project is this isn't even her main project. This is just something she's doing to learn how to do graphic novel storytelling. Um, so this is her kind of working out her processes, working out how to tell a story, working out technical things about how to draw and how to write dialogue. So that I think that goes to your point where we mentioned, I think this isn't updating as regularly as some other web comics or uh, comic books that you might be reading on the internet, because it's a work in process for her, and she's got other projects that she's working on. So yeah, and I do agree with you. You can definitely tell that there's, as there often is, when you're reading uh, an artist develop, which he's watching an artist develop. There is definitely a progression in the way kind of she's illustrating her art as well, and especially the one thing I do appreciate about the kind of the later panels is the lettering. I don't know if you noticed some of the lettering in the earlier pages at
Hmm.
all.
I don't. What about them? I don't know if I noted.
So I think some of the earlier pages, like the font is too large in some of them. I think I think for my personal aesthetic taste, I think she could have shrunk down the the lettering a bit, because if you look at some of the earlier pages, she's using a different font to the one. I think she's using a different font to the one she's using in the later pages, and I much prefer the fonts that she's using in the later pages, if that makes sense. So
Oh yeah, I see it. I think you're
so
correct.
yeah, I think for me, I prefer the font she's using in the later pages rather than the early pages, because the typeface she's using is quite tall in the earlier pages, and that means like the speech bubbles are quite large as well, and she draws beautifully. So it's just a bit of a shame that some of it's some of the art's being maybe unnecessarily obstructed by the speech bubbles. But like I mentioned, she's doing this as a work in pro as a project, just to work out her storytelling processes, and she's apparently going to be pitching another graphic novel to later on this year. So I'll be really interested to see what she does with that.
Oh, very much. I considering this is almost like a sketchbook to her. Like this is where she's learning to do this process. I'm actually astonished that she's so good at it because I had no idea about that. I didn't do enough research to be honest, but yeah, she is getting better on every, I guess, episode or chapter because her storytelling has become more and more fluid. I think as it goes on, and I guess the length of the individual episodes also contributes to that because sometimes they can be just like 4 or 5 panels, and other times they'll be a couple vertical pages, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, that's I think just the nature of the web comic format, though. Sometimes, yeah. So I think that's another thing that feeds it. Kind of like you said, this is a sketchbook, and it's a really impressive sketchbook. So I
Right.
think she's definitely someone to. The other thing that both the um, creators that we're talking about have in common is, I believe, English is both their second language.
Oh no, I
Yeah,
didn't know
so like,
that.
yes, I think Teresa is Spanish. So there are a few typos in here, but her ear for dialogue is really, really good. So I mean, there are a couple of typos, not to be kind of yeah, kind of be unexpected, or you can't really come down too harshly on that when it's someone's second language. But where did you think this comic took place? Because I thought it took place in England. What about you? Do you
I,
think?
yeah, I think England. They said what was it they said that gave it away? Um, I thought I saw some English like vernacular, something that
Yeah.
I can't recall what it
So
was.
for me, the word that gave it away was twat, which is a
That's it.
very, very, it's a very kind of like English insult term of endearment. That I don't think a lot of Americans would use. that is the other thing that I was thinking about. This is I'm not to sound too puritanical. I think it's a shame there's a bit of swearing in there. I don't know what you think about it, because this is something I'd quite like to maybe show my my younger nephews, but there is a bit of swearing in there, and that makes me feel a bit uncomfortable sharing it with them. I don't know what you'd think about
Uh,
that.
I didn't even catch the swearing really.
So
Um,
twat is a swear word. It means it refers to a
yeah.
lady's private parts. So yeah, it's it's not the worst word in the world, and I think there was another. I don't. I think there was another instance of swearing in it.
We
But
don't even
yeah,
say that here, and I've still heard it so much just through media that it doesn't even feel that bad to me. Just because
yeah,
you guys on all your media you say it so often. And the thing that gave it away
yeah.
for me was he asks for a medium chips and he gets a medium thing of
Oh
fries.
yes. Okay. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So
That's the one.
that's the other thing. That's the other one. Chips. So
Also, should say when I said "oh no" earlier, it probably sounded dramatic when you said that they weren't
yeah.
English. It was because
Yeah.
this one is so much better of a translation than the other one. I kind of just assumed
Yes.
that this was their first language, and knowing that makes me feel a lot different about the other one.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll get to that.
Um, we'll get to that. So it's we haven't really talked much about the story. So Helena, I think, is quite an endearing character. She's kind of trying to find her way through the world, and she's suffering from these terrible nightmares. And it's not particularly clear whether the kind of like the nightmares are a supernatural thing or it's just a purely subconscious happening, and there's sinister things happening within those dreams as well. It's difficult to review the plot because it's not finished yet. So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if you had any comments to make
The
on that.
take I had on it is that these are just kind of stress dreams, and everything that is like she's drowning is kind of the first dream, and that's obviously like just like a kid graduating college maybe feels like they're drowning in terms of workload and stress and stuff like that. I figure it's that. I don't know if it's gonna have any like evil force behind the dreams or anything. I think it's just a stressed out kid, but that
Yeah,
still was so compelling because there's kind of a clock on the storyline because she has what was it like a week or something
yeah.
before her
Wait till
parents.
graduation and parents show up. Yeah,
Yeah, and then so you kind of have that kind of sets the pace. Although pacing is a little bit harder for me on this just because of the way the chapters are broken up. But yeah, it kind of makes it so you have a light at the end of the tunnel, and then you can just kind of enjoy everything in between, which
yeah.
I have liked.
Yeah. So she started this off in April 2018, and the last page was published June 22nd, 2020. So I'm going to keep my eye on it. I prefer to finish reading things when they're finished. So I'm not too sure if I'd probably get quite frustrated waiting for the next issue to come out if I just kind of follow. How did you read this, by the way? Did you use like a tablet device, or did you just use a screen browser? Because I'm wondering how that affected your reading experience.
So I checked it out on my phone originally, and then I used one of my friend's tablets, and then I ended up finishing it on my phone again. But I do have a giant phone, so it's not terrible. But that's definitely not
Yeah,
my preferred way of reading things. That's why I never really have gone into webcomics because I don't have anything with a big enough screen to imitate like a physical book.
yeah. So I initially tried to read it in the web browser, and that was for both of them a pretty miserable, well, not miserable experience. It wasn't that satisfying. Then I switched to my iPad, which was fine. Is a fine way to enjoy the book. I think I prefer the um, Tapas app to the Web Tune app. That was a little bit more responsive, but yeah. So yeah, I think for me this is definitely one for our listeners to kind of check out. And hopefully, Teresa, please continue doing the work so we can have a, don't leave us hanging. We need to kind of know how the story ends.
Yeah, I would love to. I'm for sure going to keep reading this episodically, and I'm definitely going to check out anything she puts out, like through a publisher. If that's what she's planning on going for, a graphic novel, I will buy it because I think she's got a lot of talent here. She's kind of naturally good at the dialogue, and her art gets better and better every time. So there's a lot to
Yeah,
look for, I think.
yeah. So, do you want me to introduce the second webcomic that we were going to talk about? It's
Yeah, let's
okay.
do it.
It's Memento Mori Sins. It is by
Oh, good
Aileen
luck.
Gouveia. I think it's pronounced Eileen Gouveia. That's how I'm
Um,
pronouncing it. She is a graphic designer with a great imagination who started to draw her own comic and share it online. This one was on Tapas, wasn't it? On Tapas.
yes.
Memento Mori Sins. On the mean streets of the 1920s New Jersey, a young woman becomes a contract killer in order to survive in a world of organized crime and corruption. A very difficult path for a woman of this time. Will she be able to impose herself or be crushed by the mafia like many before her? So, do you want to start off with your initial thoughts about this?
Yes, okay. So, as soon as you go into the webcomic, the first thing you get is a warning that it is for mature audiences, which I guess maybe didn't excite me, but I thought it was nice that since I'd already read all of Graduation Nightmares previously, I'd get something a little darker, different tone. So I opened it up, and it seems this is a largely black and white with red being used only for blood as the only color. I guess story of a hitman, hit woman, I guess. And so it opens pretty vaguely. There's, I think, it just opens with a killing and then her returning home. And the story is in small, very small, decompressed chunks. Is my issue. Before getting into the big thing, the story seems to be meandering quite a bit, to me at least, where we'll have three initial episodes that have essentially no plot progression and haven't really even introduced us to the character yet. And then maybe the fourth or fifth episode will be just a huge plot movement, finally give us some character names and things will be moving. And then the next episode, once again, a little bit meandering. So the pacing was odd to me. And that's just the storytelling. In terms of the art, it's not my favorite style. It seems I don't want to say anything too bad about it. It's not amateurish. I think it looks pretty good, but I think that there is a level of polish that isn't there yet and could use a little bit of, I guess, just experience, which is probably what they're gaining from making this. So I think it can only get better. But for me right now, this was a little bit harder to read after Graduation Nightmares. What about you?
So I did this the opposite way around. So I read this first, and it was a bit of a slog to get through. I agree with you. The art's not bad. It's you can't say that she's not doing what she's intending to do. What I would say is that some of her aesthetic choices means that it's a bit more difficult to read. And what I'm specifically kind of referring to is all the characters are kind of beautiful and they've all got slimline figures. And that means so
And they're all
being
wearing
someone that writes,
suits.
they're all wearing suits, so it can be kind of difficult to occasionally it can be very difficult to tell which character is which. I don't know if you found that as well.
I definitely agree.
Yeah. So when I did a seminar recently because I write my own comics, and is by the Work in Progress group, And one of the things that they mentioned is when you're creating a character, the character's shape is really important because that will tell you instinctively a bit about what that character's character is like, what the what characteristics that they have. So a rounder person might be a little bit more jolly. Someone who's you know a, shaped like a square might be more stoic and strong. And I because all the characters got pretty similar builds, and as you mentioned, they're all kind of wearing suits. It was a bit of it was it's difficult to attach myself to any of them, if that made sense.
I don't think there's much to attach to. I guess I missed out on 2 or 3 chapters. I didn't fully finish it, but I got
Yeah.
quite a few chapters down. There's like 46, counting some that aren't really chapters, just covers. But yeah, there's not a ton here to latch onto in terms of character. Did you have any one character like that you preferred, or were you just kind of neutral like I was?
So really, the only two characters that have got any sort of development is the main protagonist, which is Alexina, and the gangster guy with the scar across his nose. I've really got to do a better job of making notes of the names of the characters,
I
but
think it
do you know
was
who I'm talking about?
Nicola.
Nicola, yeah, Nicola. So yeah, those are the only two characters that I felt had much development, really.
I would
Um,
agree.
so Alexina's kind of this prototypical kind of cold-blooded killer with a heart of gold, and Nicola is a persuasive, charming gangster. So kind of very much following archetypes uh, in that respect.
The whole thing was kind of typical. Like there, it was mostly archetypes. I think the story. It's I guess it's supposed to be. We said 20s New Jersey, and I think the setting here and the story, I guess, just seems like any gangster movie or any mob movie and stuff like that. It just seems I can't find anything unique that really stands out in this story that makes me want to keep reading it. It has violence, it has intrigue, it has a little bit of sex and all that stuff, but I mean, you need more than that. You need a little bit of substance, and I just don't know if it's there yet. Also,
Yeah.
I'm finally going to address the elephant in the room. The translation on this is terrible. It is bad.
Yes. It is. Yeah, it is. There are a few typos in here. There were obviously I think Eileen's. I don't know if that's a boy or a girl. I'm assuming it's a woman. Her. She really needs to kind of maybe work with an editor to kind of work out some of these typos. I used to work for a French company, and quite often they'd send me over stuff to proofread when they wrote marketing brochures. And that's not to say that their English wasn't excellent. It's just that when you're writing in your second language, they're going to be odd turns of phrase which makes sense in English but doesn't flow naturally, and that is a very, very much the case in here. Yeah, I think Alexine is supposed to be Irish.
Oh, is
Is
she?
that correct?
I have no
Yes,
idea.
I think she's supposed to be Irish, and Nicola's supposed to be maybe first or second generation Italian, and it's just you wouldn't be able to tell that from the dialogue at all.
No.
Is yeah. See, it sounds like you had quite a big problem with the way some of the dialogue was kind of written down.
Yeah, I thought some of the dialogue would have been clever had it been translated properly and spelled properly, and that's clearly not her fault. Like if she's not an English language speaker and she can't find someone to translate or help her out on this, then that's just unfortunate. But I'm hoping I think I also saw somewhere in the comments that she said she had a person helping, and they are gone, so she needs someone new. So if anyone here, I guess I don't know her native language, but someone needs to translate for her because I think she has decent dialogue. It may be a little bit edgy, a little bit typical, but I think she has decent dialogue and she can't really show it because she just isn't speaking in her native tongue, so everything's a little bit off. Especially like you said, the turns of phrase, some just simple spellings will be off. I think the one that I remember is doll face with one L, and I was like, that's just weird. You were so close. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, other than that, that's definitely the biggest thing. Like just the translation for me is what's stopping me from reading.
Yes. For me, aside from the dialogue, um, is kind of something, the aesthetic choices that I mentioned. Kind of, this isn't black and white or grayscale. And I think we both enjoy comics that are written in grayscale, but everything. This seems like they're all fashion models, and um, the world. When I think kind of 1920s New York or New Jersey, I'm thinking like grimy streets and smoke and corruption, and everything's a little bit too clean, and
Yeah.
everyone's a little bit too good looking. Um, so yeah, but that's not to say that there isn't stuff to admire in the artwork. I don't know what you felt about this, but I think she is quite good at kind of showing subtle emotion changes in the characters' faces. So I think that's one thing that's to be admired about it.
I think she's pretty decent with facial expressions. Yeah. I think also she's pretty good at the acting, like the physical shape of people's bodies. Often, I mean, there are some times when it's rough, but everyone has that. She's pretty good at that, especially when during the few fight scenes, she has her anatomy right, which I appreciate. And like you were saying about the setting, it is a little bit clean. And I also noticed a lot of the times she'll cut out the background either just because they're up against a wall and the wall looks the same as just a blank gray background, so you couldn't really tell anyway, or they'll just be no background during a dialogue scene, and when she does add the buildings, they're very clean, very nice looking architecture, but it doesn't look like um, the grimy streets of 1920s New Jersey, I guess.
So I'm talking about kind of the. I'm really glad you brought up kind of background. She does something quite interesting um, with the backgrounds. Well, quite curious, should I say? So I think she's um, creating this on Photoshop, and I think she's drawing the background layer separate to the foreground layer. Um, Obviously, that's how most people would do it, and I think she's putting like a grayscale filter on the background layer because kind of there's this crotch
Yeah,
hatching
that's
effect. I
scratchy.
must,
Yeah,
yeah, the scratchy thing, and then that's not replicated on the skin tones of the characters, which is very almost too white, if that makes sense.
very clean.
Very, very clean. The characters need to be a bit grimy, a bit dirtier. Maybe that's not aesthetically pleasing to her, but for me, that would maybe make it a bit more of a engaging, um, make it more engaging to look at.
I definitely agree. The characters are just. Um, I think it's also because just the lines themselves on the characters' faces are very clean and very precise.
Yes,
So there's not a lot of
very,
anatomy there.
very thin lines as
Oh
opposed
yeah.
to Teresa's, which there was some of the lines were thin, some of the lines were thicker. Um,
Each character
but
has
yeah,
one defining facial trait, kind of like she has a nick out of her eyebrow, and then Nicola has a scar on his nose, and but other than that, they pretty much all have the same face.
yes. I mean, I agree with you. So it's she need. I mean, there are some artists that work for the big two or three that can't draw different faces. So we can't
Oh yeah.
really rag on her too much for that. But it would really help out if she kind of varied at least the shape of people's faces. So some people had slightly more pronounced jaws, squarer jaws, or stuff like this, and kind of even changing the shape. For me, if you just change the shape of people's bodies, everyone's kind of these. I don't want to say weirdly androgynous, but do you know what I mean? It's kind of like very catwalk, uh, sort of like catwalk bodies. Again, when I'm thinking of 1920s, 19 kind of 40s kind of prohibition era, I'm thinking of films like The Untouchables, and quite
Hmm.
a lot of these gangsters are corpulent and fat because of they're getting fat on their illicit profits. Um, the the cops should be kind of worn down and haggard and 6 o'clock shadows, and there's kind of almost none of that here.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think I liked it a little bit better than you did, but I'd struggle to recommend anyone checking it out. Really,
I couldn't really. I just yeah. I couldn't find anything to latch on to. I don't think I'd recommend it to a lot of people. I think it wasn't a waste of time to read. It definitely was interesting in its moments, but there was a lot of dry spells throughout, especially in comparison to that other webcomic.
yeah. I left this. My kind of abiding feeling about this is kind of frustration, because she's quite clearly a very talented artist, but it's the other things that she needs to kind of maybe need a little bit of help with from an editor or a proofreader, in terms of, one, as you mentioned, the pacing, and two, making sure that the dialogue reads fluently in English.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Before we get too far off it, I will say one thing she does pretty decently. Her action scenes are pretty tense. Like they're usually slow, and before the violence hits, it'll be a pretty tense scene of dialogue or just cutting to characters' faces. I think she does that well. And with those better faces, like if she could be improving on those faces a bit, and the characters were more unique, then it would even kick that up even farther, where they'd be that much more interesting.
Yeah, the action scenes generally are quite well done. Again, hating to compare this to Teresa's comic, while the action scenes are kind of beautifully framed and sequenced, they occasionally do feel a little bit weightless, if you know
Hmm.
what I mean. Kind of, there's not that visceral kind of. Is this an odd thing? Occasionally, it looks like a CGI fight,
Yeah.
kind of like where it's been put through a computer, and you can kind of like tell that there's no impact there. There's like nothing kind of touching. But then there's other sequences where you can actually feel, oh, actually, she's she's hitting that character as hard as you can. But in other sequences, it feels a little bit weightless.
There's a couple panels where it looks like it's kind of a zoomed out perspective, like a bird's eye view almost, and it
Yeah,
looks like they're just kind of floating in empty space with a picture of a background underneath them. Which I get, it is literally a picture of a background and it's a layer underneath them. But if you had
yeah,
like shadows cast or a light source or something to make it feel more like a three-dimensional room that they're in, that would really pump up the believability of it.
yeah. I think we're kind of focusing so much on the art and the technical aspects of this, because I think fundamentally, like, Alexina as a character is, as a protagonist, is, while not the most original protagonist in the world, is somewhat intriguing. Kind of the relationship that she has with her brother, I felt was an interesting backstory. Quite often in stories, some writers are a little bit reluctant to make the main protagonist unlikable, but early on, you see in her backstory, she was really quite horrible to her younger brother early on, and something's obviously happened to their parents, and she's been left in charge. So I felt that was quite well done, but I just wish I'm just frustrated with it because like this, with a few things changed, this could be quite good. I'd be kind of happy to read it, but in the state that it's in at the moment, I wouldn't be able to recommend it.
I agree. There's a lot of potential. I think the brother sister dynamic has a lot of untapped potential, just because I think that could be your main framing device of like everything around this could revolve around this brother and sister trying to survive and do whatever their end goal is. But we don't really see a lot of that.
Yeah,
Also, I think she's probably pretty new creator. Probably is learning as she goes, and I think it'll only get better. So
yeah, yeah. So, like you said, I agree. Kind of, if we could, like, the brother doesn't really have much of a personality, so we're not really, as a character, I'm not really too invested in what happens to him outside of how it would affect Alexina. So it'd be lovely, if she could kind of maybe develop that character bit and see how he's getting on in kind of university and things like that. And I think the other main relationship between in the story is between Alexina and kind of Nicola. There might be kind of a will they, won't they dynamic in terms of either will they, won't they kill each other, or will they, won't they end up in bed with each other. So that's, yeah. So yeah. There is a bit of intrigue. When did she start writing this? So the first episode came out in January 2019. So yeah, that's kind of a year and a half doing your first. It's quite good work for someone who's doing the first comic. So, but we have to be honest and kind of say there's a lot that needs to be kind of improved upon as well.
yeah, I definitely agree. There has been an increase in. I'm looking at the later chapters here now, since I've just been looking at the earlier chapters. I do think that they're getting better. The backgrounds seem to be a bit more detailed and more common, but overall it does look about the same as it did in the beginning. So I'll keep up on it. I'm probably not going to read it episodically, but I'll check back in every now and then just to see how the creator's been leveling up, as they say.
Yeah, I probably won't. And I think the reason for that is I don't know what the end point of this is going to be. With Teresa's, I always prefer a story where I know that there's an ending, and unless I know that there's an ending to this, I'm not going to check back in on it. Yeah, so that's just me personally.
That's what makes Graduation Nightmares a little bit more readable, because you know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Like I said earlier, you have that the parents will be here in 7 days. You only have this much time. I got an ending to look forward to. And in this, I don't really even know what the plot structure is of this exactly.
Yeah, I concur on that one. It's cool. We've been going for about 45 minutes. Any final thoughts on Memento Mori?
I think I said all I wanted to say. I would check out. If you could check out one, I would check out Graduation Nightmares, just in terms of the strong story.
Yes, I'd agree with that. It's not that Memento Mori is necessarily bad. Wasn't to my taste, but if it's a choice between one or the other, then I think Graduation Nightmares for me is the far more appealing thing to read.
Yeah, it feels a little bit more professional too. It feels a little bit more polished.
Yeah, more polished. Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, well, if that's about all we have to talk about, what do you say we wrap it up?
Yep, let's wrap it up.
All right, guys, thank you for listening. It's been fun talking about these books. I hope we weren't too harsh about anything. I think we were pretty fair.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we were.
Yeah, being honest is good. I had fun reading them both, regardless of what it sounded like. So, thanks for checking it out, guys. Stay safe, wear a mask, all that good stuff.
Yep. Stay safe, guys. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.